share with everybody. I've lost how to do this. Okay. Slideshow. Okay, good morning. I'm Jeff Manber, Managing Director, sometimes Chief Executive Officer of NanoRacks. I've spent about 25, 30 years working on changing the relationship in space of the government. And for me, the government should behave as a commercial customer, as is true in any other marketplace on the earth. And I worked with Pan Am Sat, with Rene Anselmo, when we broke up the Intelsat monopoly. And for 9 years, I worked with the Russians, I think the only American to work on the Russian side, with Energia, RKK Energia, in helping to, first on getting NASA to work with the Mir, and then on creating the ISS environment as we know it today. And as Bruce said, it was a difficult time. There were a lot of people opposed to it. Even getting the orbital inclination change from 28 to 51 was very, very difficult. And it wasn't until, unfortunately, the Columbia tragedy that a lot of Americans in our industry came to realize that international cooperation, the more people you have working a project, the better. And it's taken us quite some time to realize that, yes, there are political risks involving non-U.S. organizations, but there's a lot of strengths. And so I've spent a long time working on these issues, and I've tried to take what I've learned and put them into NanoRacks. What I want to talk about briefly this morning is what have we learned about the commercial pathway in the 5 years that we've been working NanoRacks. NanoRacks is all about the democratization of ISS access. And what do we mean by that? You know, the way it used to be, the way Bruce described it, it was extremely difficult to come in off the street. This is, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Not only was there not a procedure in place, there was no cases, there was no really front door at NASA, but there was also a mindset that maybe the best utilization is done by the aerospace companies, or sometimes that they were the only customers who would do something. We set out at NanoRacks to say to NASA, just about 5 years ago, look, we don't want your money, and that got their attention big time. And what we wanted was the right to build our own hardware and market it to whom we wish. And so for us, it's about having set prices, owning our own hardware. I think we're the first company in the world to own its own hardware on the space station and to market that commercially. It takes a receptive NASA leadership. As Bruce was indicating, there's been a mind change at NASA. We could not do what we're doing without the strong support of Mr. Gerstenmaier, Mr. Suffredini, and others. We have a very broad Space Act agreement that allows us access to the station. We work very closely, as Greg said, with CASIS. And I don't think when Jeff and his team was creating CASIS, they envisioned or could, no one envisioned that there would also be a private company that would set out in the same sort of pathway. And what we do is complementary to what CASIS does, but from a more commercial angle. And for us, it's all about utilization from non-aerospace organizations, and I'll talk about that briefly. And also, frankly, we forget about this, but this is a difficult time for the American space program. We're not flying our own guys up and down, and it's a good chance on the space station to show leadership. Here's some of our customers. We're very pleased that we have no contract with NASA. NASA's about 8% of my revenue now. We have companies ranging from Planet Labs and NanoSatisfy, which just changed its name. We have universities. CASIS is a customer. As indicating, we're very appreciative of that. And what CASIS has done was allow us to move forward some of our major programs. We also have non-U.S. We've flown folks from Peru, from Vietnam, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Romania. We have ESA as a customer now in our different projects, and I'll explain that briefly. Just taking a quick look, Planet Labs, many of you have probably heard about them and their doves and their small Earth observation satellites. They have now gone out, their idea is to have constant coverage of the Earth through small CubeSats. And we made an investment, and I'll talk about that, in CubeSat deployers. and we really appreciate, we've been deploying those on orbital, and we really appreciate Orbital Sciences working with us. Planet Labs has said that we moved them up about 2 years into the marketplace. And they've recently raised, I think it's public numbers, about $56 million. They're valued at $250 million now. And I think that NanoRacks, NASA, Congress, everything that the station is doing today has played a role in that. And what's really remarkable is we're at a point where the International Space Station, yes, a government program, with, I'd like to say, the help of NanoRacks, has become disruptive. And I think that's pretty cool. So, also Science Cheerleader, these are a great group of ex-cheerleaders from the NFL. They're doing wonderful programs, and they went on the Tonight Show, I think, or something, and they got all sorts of publicity, and we were able to get them up on station and helping them get good results. It's all about a new relationship with NASA and the government. And NASA for us is a customer, it's a regulator, it's a landlord, but it's not a competitor. And those of us who worked and lived through the 80s and parts of the 90s remember when NASA was a competitor. If you had a good idea and walked into NASA in 1988, by the time you left the room, they were planning the same thing. And they could do it cheaper because it's taxpayers' money. They couldn't do it as well. And it was one of the reasons, in my view, that we really had a difficult time in utilization during the space shuttle era. Lots of other reasons, but that's one of the reasons. And I'll say the same is true with Cases for NanoRacks. Cases is a customer. We're not competitors. There's lots of things we can do to help Cases and things that they do to help us. I thought it'd be interesting to take a moment and talk about first our investments and really put this into numbers, and then some of our customers. We've invested right now, we're coming up, numbers I'm willing to say publicly, we're over $12, $13, $14 million that startup NanoRacks has put into the International Space Station. That's getting into significant money now. We've put about $1 million into our platforms, the standardized nanolabs, which when you attach a project, a payload to our research platforms, you get power and you get data flowing down. That project can be returned via the Soyuz or the Dragon. We've returned about 18 projects through the Soyuz and just starting to use the Dragon now. Centrifuge, we work in conjunction with Astrium, and we've invested about $1 million in that. The CubeSat deployer is a wonderful story. I mean, the International Space Station was never thought to be a meaningful platform for CubeSats. CubeSats, as all of you know, are probably one of the most exciting things, other than 3D printing, but maturing, but one of the most exciting things to come along. It's real. I mean, you know, everyone is looking at miniaturization on satellites. Where do you launch now? Well, you launch on Manber, the Russians. You launch, you know, on a couple of Air Force, and there's really no dedicated launch platform. So my technical guys, Mike Johnson, came to me and said, we have an opportunity here. You know, let's do our own deployers. I'm looking at like $1 million in an unproven marketplace. Cases can't do that. NASA wouldn't know how to do that. Okay, so we went ahead and we went to NASA and we said, will you let us put our own deployers out on the Japanese, the GEM, the Kibo module? They said, you want, you know, we're not, as usual, we're not asking you for money. They said yes. We went to JAXA. JAXA said yes. In 9 months, we signed up Planet Labs and others as customers. We designed, had manufactured, and passed through safety the deployers through NASA Safety and JAXA, and it launched on Orbital Sciences. Okay, and you know, that changed the industry. And today we are completely booked up. We are booked up, I think now, Orbital 6 we're making reservations for now. It's great for everybody. It's great for the American industry. It's showing, I mean, it's making space station front and center in a disruptive new marketplace. It's commercial. It's leveraging taxpayer resources. This is all happening based on the commitment that the taxpayers and Congress made 10 years ago, and yet it's the private sector, for whatever reason, that magical American, where we take leadership in this, that ingenuity, that it's you know, you step in, you see an opportunity, you put your money down, you back it up with the hardware, the infrastructure is in place because of the government. That to me is like a mature marketplace. And so it is very, very exciting. And finally, our external platform, where it's costing us chunk of change. Astrium is a vendor, manufacturer, and external platform to be used as a test bed for sensors, secondary payloads. We're very proud and excited that we have a seat at the Air Force HOPS that was just announced, their IDIQ. There's about 20 companies that are providing opportunities for secondary payloads to the Air Force, and we're the only one that's space station. And so again, we're putting space station front and center based on the prior investment made by the American public. Tangible results. And then one other thing is it's fascinating to us to watch the valuation of our customers. We've just signed our latest customer is Earthcast. They're a publicly traded company on the Toronto Stock Exchange. They're putting, I think it's publicly, they're putting about 50, 60 million into the project on the American side. Their valuation is about 100 million. Planet Labs has a valuation of 250 million. You add it up, and just the NanoRacks customers has a valuation of about 350 million, and none of these companies existed 5 years ago. You throw in a Made in Space, you throw in the Muses platform with Teledyne Brown that they're self-investing, and you're seeing the permanent facility in low Earth orbit becoming exactly what we all wished a permanent facility in low Earth orbit would be. It would be an incubator, it would be a commercial platform, it would work with government services, because it still is an immature marketplace. And from our vantage point, and I never thought I would be the one saying this, but from my vantage point, it's all working now. We figured it out. You get government resources to help on the transportation, government resources on the platform, and for us, this allows us to look at some of the next steps. Next steps. First, we still have issues with NASA. Fascinating how the safety people with their decals and everything else are going to handle Made in Space when it doesn't go through the safety review. I can't wait to see how that goes. For us at NanoRacks, it's about taking the lessons we're learning and moving beyond space station. We're looking at our own platform now, what we do with our own platform, how do we do it, what's the need for that, where do we go with that, can we do it more efficiently, and therefore, greater margins. I have investors, and for us, it's all about where the customer is. People are always saying, what's your next step? Next step is up to the customers. Probably the greatest thing we've shown at NanoRacks is that there are customers for low Earth orbit. When we started out 5 years ago, that was an open question. You can always get it free through NASA, or ESA, or JAXA. And now I have ESA as a customer. So, I mean, the answer is yes, you can get government space agencies to be customers for you in low Earth orbit. So for us, the next steps is to see what else we can take and using this government-private sector partnership and create more commercial markets and utilization in low Earth. So we've shown there is a pathway, and there is an optimal way to work with organizations like NASA and CASIS and to leverage everything that's coming from the public sector. Our customers have their own funding very often, unless it's via an organization like CASIS. They don't wish to do peer group review. They want to keep things proprietary. That's all the commercial pathway. And so for me, space is becoming truly just another place to do business. And that's what we've all been working for, and it means we're in a very exciting time. And I think this is the moment when we can really move forward on less cost, more resources, and move beyond LEO. Thank you.